Somewhere beneath the golden haze of the Egyptian desert stands a structure so ancient, so precise, and so impossibly constructed that even today, armed with laser surveying technology, satellite imaging, and centuries of accumulated engineering knowledge, we cannot fully explain how it was built. It has stood for over 4,500 years. It has survived earthquakes, floods, empires, and the slow erasure of time itself. And yet we still do not know, with complete certainty, who built it. The limestone blocks that form the body of the Great Pyramid were quarried at Tura, a site just 8 miles across the Nile to the east. The granite that lines its innermost chambers was dragged from Aswan, a quarry more than 500 miles away. 2.5 million individual blocks of stone fitted together with a precision that modern engineers openly struggle to replicate. The official story is clean, confident, and comfortable. Pharaoh Khufu. Copper tools. 20,000 workers. 20 years. But what if that story is wrong? What if the tidy, textbook-approved version of history, the one drilled into classrooms and stamped onto museum plaques, is missing something so profound, so ancient, and so civilization-altering that the people responsible for protecting that story have spent decades making sure you never find out? Today we follow the research of author and investigator Graham Hancock, a man who has spent over 30 years asking the questions that mainstream academics refuse to answer. And what he has uncovered may permanently change the way you understand the ancient world. Graham Hancock is not a product of academic institutions. He holds no Egyptology degree. He occupies no tenured chair at a prestigious university. He is not a member of the established archaeological elite. And for the tens of millions of people around the world who have read his books and watched his documentaries, that is precisely why they take him seriously. Hancock began his professional life as an investigative journalist for The Economist, one of the most rigorously fact-checked publications in the world. He was trained from the very beginning to question official narratives, to examine evidence without institutional bias, and to follow the facts wherever they led, even when they led somewhere uncomfortable. In the early 1990s, Hancock made a decision that would define the rest of his life. He walked away from conventional journalism and turned his full attention toward a single consuming question. What if human history is far older and far more sophisticated than we have been taught to believe? His early research took him to the pyramids of Egypt, the stone circles of Britain, the temples of Central America, and the sunken ruins off the coast of Japan. He interviewed geologists, astronomers, archaeologists, and scholars of ancient mythology. He examined ancient maps that appeared to show coastlines only visible during the last ice age. He studied stone alignments that encoded precise astronomical knowledge. He compared flood myths from cultures separated by entire oceans, myths that were eerily and inexplicably similar in their details. What he found was not a single anomaly or a convenient coincidence. It was a pattern, a global, persistent, unmistakable pattern pointing to a lost chapter of human history, a chapter that mainstream academia had either overlooked or chosen to ignore. Critics have been swift and fierce in their condemnation. Respected archaeologists have called his work pseudoscience. Prominent historians have labeled it misleading and dangerous. Some have gone further, arguing that theories of lost advanced civilizations subtly undermine the documented achievements of ancient African and Near Eastern peoples. Hancock rejects this charge entirely. His argument is not that ancient Egyptians were incapable. His argument is that the Great Pyramid itself may be far older than ancient Egypt, built by a predecessor civilization whose knowledge the Egyptians inherited, revered, and built upon. And that argument begins with the most basic, most devastating observation imaginable. The Great Pyramid of Giza contains almost no evidence that the ancient Egyptians built it at all. The Great Pyramid of Giza is the last surviving wonder of the ancient world. Rising to a height of 480 feet, roughly the height of a 48-story skyscraper, it dominated the surrounding landscape for thousands of years as the tallest structure on Earth. It covers more than 13 acres of desert floor. It contains enough stone to build a wall 3 feet high and 1 foot wide, stretching all the way from London to New York City. And yet, for all its staggering scale, the inside of the Great Pyramid is almost entirely silent. Consider what we know about ancient Egyptian tombs. They are among the most thoroughly decorated structures in human history. The walls of royal burial chambers are covered floor to ceiling with elaborate inscriptions, detailed passages from the Book of the Dead, soaring hymns to the gods, proud declarations of royal lineage and divine power. Priests spent years carefully painting and carving these texts because they believed that without these words, the pharaoh's soul could not navigate the afterlife. The inscriptions were not decoration. They were a spiritual necessity. Not one word of any of it appears anywhere inside the Great Pyramid. No hieroglyphs on the interior walls, no carved reliefs, no funeral prayers, no royal dedications. Just vast, cold, precisely engineered chambers carved from bare stone. The so-called King's Chamber contains a single granite box, plain, undecorated, and empty. No mummy has ever been found inside the Great Pyramid. No burial goods, no royal seals, no evidence whatsoever that any pharaoh was ever interred within its walls. So the logical question becomes this: how do we know that Khufu built it? The answer is a set of painted marks, crude quarry graffiti, discovered in 1837 by British explorer Colonel Howard Vyse inside a sealed chamber above the King's Chamber. These marks, painted in red ochre, include what Vyse identified as a cartouche, a royal name symbol bearing the name of Khufu. To this day, those marks represent the single direct physical link between the Great Pyramid and the pharaoh credited with its construction. But the circumstances surrounding this discovery are deeply and troublingly problematic. Vyse was under enormous pressure. His funding was nearly exhausted. A rival explorer was close to overshadowing his work entirely. He had invested a significant portion of his personal fortune into the expedition and had found almost nothing of note. And then at precisely the most desperate moment, he blasted open a sealed chamber with gunpowder and discovered the only known inscription connecting the pyramid to Khufu, with no independent witnesses present. Researcher Scott Crichton has since conducted a detailed forensic analysis of those marks. His findings are unsettling. Several of the hieroglyphic signs appear to be from a later historical period, signs that should not have existed in the 4th Dynasty vocabulary. The orientation of the royal cartouche contradicts established ancient Egyptian writing conventions. And Vyse's own private journal, Crichton argues, reveals that he already knew what the Khufu cartouche should look like before he claimed to have discovered it. Whether or not those marks were forged, the deeper problem remains. One set of disputed quarry marks in a hidden chamber, found by a single man under financial pressure, with no corroborating evidence in any other ancient text, relief, or inscription from the period. That is the entire evidentiary foundation for attributing the most extraordinary structure ever built to a fourth dynasty pharaoh. Hancock's conclusion is measured but striking. Khufu may not have built the Great Pyramid. He may have simply found it, an already ancient and incomprehensible monument, and done what powerful leaders throughout history have always done. He claimed it. If that is true, it raises the question that lies at the heart of everything that follows. Who actually built it, and when? To understand why the Great Pyramid is so difficult to explain, you have to set aside the mythology and look at it purely as an engineering problem. And when you do that, the official story begins to collapse under the weight of its own impossibility. Begin with alignment. The Great Pyramid is oriented to true geographic north, not magnetic north, which shifts over time, but true north, with an error margin of just 0.05 degrees. That is a level of directional precision that today requires sophisticated instruments, computer modeling, and satellite data to achieve reliably. 4,500 years ago, the builders of Giza reportedly achieved it with copper tools and wooden instruments. No satisfactory explanation for how this was accomplished has ever been demonstrated through repeatable experiment. Next, consider the base. The Great Pyramid's foundation covers more than 13 acres of desert limestone. Across that entire vast surface, the variation in level, the degree to which the base is not perfectly flat, is less than 1 inch. 1 inch. Across 13 acres. Even using today's laser-guided surveying technology, achieving that standard of precision at that scale is considered an impressive engineering accomplishment. The ancient Egyptians, we are told, managed it with plumb bobs and copper levels. Now consider the stones themselves. The 2.5 million limestone blocks that form the pyramid's core and the granite blocks of the inner chambers fit together with a precision that defies simple explanation. In many locations, the joints between stones are so tight that it is physically impossible to razor blade between them. Some of these joints are angled, some are gently curved. The stones do not merely rest against one another, they interlock, each one shaped to distribute the weight and stress of the entire structure in a deliberate and mathematically calculated way. This is not rough stacking. This is the product of a mind that understood structural engineering at a level we would consider advanced today. And then there is the timeline. The mainstream narrative gives the builders of Giza 20 years to complete the project. 2.5 million blocks, each one quarried, shaped, transported, and placed. Experimental archaeologists using copper tools, the tools the official story provides, have found that working a single granite surface for hours produces minimal progress. The tools wear down almost immediately. The process is slow, imprecise, and exhausting. Run the mathematics on the official timeline, and you arrive at a figure that stops most engineers cold. To complete the pyramid in 20 years, working around the clock, 7 days a week, without a single rest day across 2 decades, a new block would need to be quarried, shaped, transported, and precisely placed every 2.5 minutes. Every 2.5 minutes. Not approximately placed, not roughly positioned, precisely placed, fitted to sub-inch tolerances, in the dark, at heights of up to 480 feet, using ropes and wooden sledges. Multiple modern engineers and construction specialists have stated publicly that they could not replicate this achievement using the tools the official narrative assigns to the ancient Egyptians. Not in 20 years, not in 50, and beyond all of this, the internal architecture of the pyramid encodes knowledge that its supposed builders should not have possessed. The ratio of the pyramid's height to the perimeter of its base encodes a close approximation of the mathematical constant pi, a relationship that European mathematicians would not formally document for another 2,000 years. The structure captures and preserves accurate knowledge of the solar year, the equinoxes, and even, according to some researchers, the circumference of the Earth itself. This is not a monument. This is a library, carved in stone, encoded in geometry, and built to last forever. Graham Hancock puts it plainly. What we are looking at is not primitive trial and error. It is the product of advanced, systematic, applied engineering knowledge. And that knowledge, he argues, did not originate in the old kingdom of ancient Egypt. If the precision of the pyramid's construction is difficult to explain, the logistics of transporting its raw materials take the mystery to an entirely different scale. Most of the pyramid's limestone came from Tura, 8 miles away across the Nile. Enormous quantities were quarried directly from the Giza plateau itself. But the heart of the structure, the walls, floor, and ceiling of the king's chamber, is made from something far harder, far heavier, and far more demanding to work with than limestone: granite, specifically rose granite from the quarries of Aswan, a city more than 500 miles to the south in Upper Egypt. The granite blocks used in the king's chamber are enormous. The largest weigh approximately 80 tons each. To put that in physical terms, 80 tons is roughly the weight of a fully loaded diesel locomotive. Not a car, not a truck, a locomotive. Now consider the journey. Each of these locomotive weight blocks had to be separated from bedrock at Aswan using copper tools against one of the hardest natural stones on Earth. It then had to be loaded onto a vessel and transported more than 500 miles upriver against the Nile's current, then unloaded at Giza, then moved overland across the desert, then lifted with ropes and wooden sledges to a height of over 150 feet inside the growing pyramid, and then placed with sub-inch precision into its permanent position. We have no confirmed evidence of a mechanism capable of accomplishing this. The most widely cited theory is the ramp theory, the idea that builders constructed a long sloping earthen ramp alongside the rising pyramid, up which teams of workers drag the stones. Engineers who have analyzed this proposal point to a fatal structural problem. A ramp capable of reaching the upper levels of the pyramid at a workable angle would need to be nearly a mile long. The volume of material required to build that ramp would exceed the volume of the pyramid itself, and not a single trace of it has ever been found. Not a remnant of compacted earth, not a tool mark, not a post hole. Other proposals: internal spiral ramps, counterweight systems, hydraulic lifts, have each been examined and found wanting. None has been demonstrated to be physically capable of moving 80-ton blocks of granite to a height of 150 feet, and none has produced a single piece of archaeological evidence in its support. What we are left with is a logistical problem the official story has never cleanly solved. 80-ton stones, 500 miles, 150 feet in the air, 2.5 minutes per block. Copper tools. Hancock's position is straightforward. This was not accomplished through sheer manpower and improvised wooden technology. It required a level of engineering knowledge, possibly including a deep understanding of mechanical advantage, applied physics, and large-scale logistics that we have not yet accounted for. At the southwestern edge of the Giza Plateau stands a monument almost as famous as the pyramids themselves, the Great Sphinx. It is the largest monolithic statue on Earth, carved from a single mass of natural limestone bedrock, measuring 240 feet in length and 66 feet in height. Its face stares eastward across the desert with an expression that has invited interpretation for thousands of years. The mainstream archaeological consensus holds that the Sphinx was carved during the reign of Pharaoh Khafre, around 2,500 years before the Common Era, roughly the same period as the neighboring pyramids. This dating is based primarily on stylistic analysis and the proximity of the Sphinx to Khafre's Causeway and Valley Temple. But in the early 1990s, a Boston University geologist named Dr. Robert Schoch conducted a formal geological analysis of the Sphinx that produced findings the Egyptological community was entirely unprepared for. Schoch holds advanced degrees in geology and geophysics from Yale University. He approached the Sphinx not as an archaeologist, but as a scientist trained to read the language of eroded stone. And the stone of the Sphinx's body and its surrounding enclosure walls told a story that contradicted everything on the official timeline. The erosion patterns visible on the Sphinx are deep, vertical, and undulating, a pattern that geologists consistently associate with sustained precipitation, meaning prolonged and heavy rainfall. This type of water erosion produces rounded, channeled surfaces where water has run down vertical faces over long periods of time. It is fundamentally different from the horizontal, layered erosion caused by wind-blown sand, which is what you see on every other structure on the Giza Plateau that has been securely dated to the Old Kingdom. The Sphinx shows water erosion. The other structures from the same official period show wind erosion. They are sitting side by side in the same desert, exposed to the same conditions, and they have weathered completely differently. The explanation for this, Schoch concluded, is straightforward and geologically sound. The Sphinx was carved at a time when the Giza region received enough sustained rainfall to produce this level of precipitation-driven erosion. And the last time this part of Egypt experienced rainfall of that duration and intensity was during the final stages of the last ice age, approximately 10,000 to 12,000 years ago. That would place the carving of the Sphinx somewhere between 10,000 and 8,000 years before the Common Era, more than 7,000 years before it was officially built. The Egyptological community's response was swift and dismissive. Without engaging Schoch's geological evidence directly, mainstream scholars argued that the evidence for Khafre's construction of the Sphinx was simply too strong to be overturned by erosion patterns. Some geologists offered alternative explanations involving unusual salt weathering or subsurface moisture. But Schoch and his colleagues have systematically addressed each of these counter-arguments, and the debate has never been truly resolved. What Schoch's findings established, and what no one has been able to cleanly refute, is this. The erosion on the Sphinx is inconsistent with the climate that has existed at Giza for the past 5,000 years. Something carved that stone with water, and that water fell a very, very long time ago. Now here is where two completely independent lines of scientific evidence begin to point toward the same impossible conclusion. In 1983, a researcher named Robert Bauval was working in the Saudi Arabian desert when he noticed something about the night sky above him. Looking up at the constellation Orion, he observed that the three stars of Orion's belt, Alnitak, Alnilam, and Mintaka, were arranged in a distinctive pattern. Two of the stars fell in a near diagonal line. The third, the smallest and dimmest of the three, was offset slightly to one side. He had seen that pattern before, on the ground, at Giza. The three great pyramids of the Giza Plateau, the pyramids of Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure, are arranged in precisely the same configuration. Two fall in a near diagonal line. The third, the smallest of the three, the Pyramid of Menkaure, is offset slightly to one side. The match is not approximate. The offset, the relative sizing, the proportional spacing, They mirror the stars of Orion's belt in a way that is far too specific to be accidental. But Bovell went further. He fed the data into astronomical software that could calculate the precession of the equinoxes, the slow and centuries-long wobble of the Earth on its axis that gradually shifts the position of the stars relative to the ground below. And he asked the software a single question. When did the stars of Orion's belt appear in this exact configuration at this specific angle and orientation directly above the Giza Plateau? The answer was 10,500 years before the Common Era, the same date that geologist Robert Schoch, working from an entirely different body of evidence, the erosion patterns carved into the limestone body of the Sphinx, had independently identified as the likely age of that monument. Two researchers, two disciplines, two completely unconnected lines of evidence, one date. Graham Hancock argues that this convergence is not coincidence. It is intentional. The Giza Plateau, he believes, was designed as a permanent ground-level mirror of the night sky as it appeared at a specific moment in deep history, a moment the builders wanted the future to find. And Giza is not alone in this. At Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey, a site now confirmed to be at least 11,600 years old, making it the oldest known complex of monumental architecture on Earth, the stone pillars appear to encode astronomical alignments, with some researchers identifying references to the catastrophic impact event of approximately 12,800 years ago. At Teotihuacan in Mexico, a city of staggering scale built by a civilization we have never fully identified. The layout of the pyramid complex mirrors the positions of the planets in our solar system, and the Pyramid of the Sun encodes the same mathematical relationship between height and circumference as the Great Pyramid of Giza. At Angkor Wat in Cambodia, researchers have identified alignments with the constellation Draco as it appeared in 10,500 years before the Common Era, the same date that appears at Giza. These sites were built on different continents, by different cultures, separated by thousands of miles of open ocean. By every account available to mainstream archaeology, they had no contact with one another. Yet they are all, in different ways, pointing to the same moment in time. Hancock's interpretation is as straightforward as it is staggering. These are not independent achievements. They are the scattered fingerprints of a single ancient and global civilization, a civilization that understood the stars, mapped the earth, encoded advanced mathematics into stone, and left behind messages designed to survive anything that history could throw at them. Which brings us to the central claim of Hancock's 3 decades of research. The pyramids of Giza were not built by Pharaoh Khufu. They were not built by any pharaoh. They were not the product of the 4th dynasty of ancient Egypt. They were built, or at the very least originally conceived and engineered, by a civilization that existed long before dynastic Egypt rose to prominence. A civilization that was advanced, globally connected, astronomically sophisticated, and almost entirely destroyed. The scientific framework for this civilization's destruction is not fringe speculation. It is increasingly supported by mainstream geological and astronomical research. Approximately 12,800 years ago, at the boundary between the Pleistocene and the Holocene epochs, the Earth experienced a sudden and catastrophic cooling event known as the Younger Dryas. Temperatures across the northern hemisphere dropped dramatically within decades. Ice sheets that had been slowly retreating began to re-advance. Sea levels shifted. Vast freshwater floods swept across North America and into the North Atlantic, disrupting global ocean circulation. The cause of this event has been the subject of serious scientific debate. In 2007, a team of researchers put forward the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. The proposal that this catastrophic cooling was triggered by the fragmentation and impact of a large comet that struck the North American ice sheet and produced an explosion of unprecedented scale. The impact would have triggered massive wildfires across multiple continents, sent a cloud of dust and debris into the upper atmosphere, and generated the catastrophic floods recorded in geological strata around the world and in the flood myths of virtually every ancient culture on Earth. This hypothesis remains debated, but the evidence for a major extraterrestrial impact event at this boundary is growing. Researchers have found a layer of platinum, an element rare in Earth's crust, but abundant in an extraterrestrial material, deposited in sediment cores from sites spanning multiple continents, all dated to the same narrow window of time. They have found evidence of massive fires. They have found nanodiamonds, shock quartz, and cosmic spherules in the same layer. Something catastrophic happened 12,800 years ago. Hancock argues that this event destroyed the civilization that built Giza, or at least built the original prototype of what we see today. Its survivors scattered across the globe, carrying fragments of an extraordinary knowledge base in astronomy, geometry, agriculture, navigation, and monumental architecture. In the following millennia, those survivors became the mythological culture bearers of later civilizations. The teachers, the founding figures, the gods. These are the people Hancock calls the magicians of the gods. Not supernatural beings, not extraterrestrials. Human beings, sophisticated, organized, and possessed of knowledge that took their civilization thousands of years to accumulate, reduced almost overnight to a remnant of what they had once been. And the Great Pyramid, in this reading, is not a tomb. It is a testament, a permanent and stone-encoded record of everything that civilization knew, designed to survive the catastrophe that destroyed them and to speak to whoever came next. If Hancock's theory is correct, even partially, then the implications for our understanding of human history are profound. And here is where the story takes a turn that Hancock finds deeply troubling. Because inside the Great Pyramid itself, there are discoveries that have been made, remarkable and potentially history-altering discoveries that have been investigated, documented, and then quietly left to gather dust. In 1993, a German engineer named Rudolf Gantenbrink sent a small remote-controlled robot called Upuau 2 into one of the narrow shafts leading out of the Queen's Chamber in the Great Pyramid. These shafts, roughly 8 inches square, had puzzled researchers for years. Gantenbrink's robot traveled deeper into the shaft than any instrument had reached before, and its camera transmitted footage of something that had never been seen. A small stone door, fitted with 2 copper handles, blocking the passage approximately 200 feet inside the pyramid. A sealed door, leading to an unknown space, deep inside the most studied structure on Earth. The world's media lit up. Archaeologists expressed excitement. Theories multiplied. And then, almost immediately, the investigation stopped. Egyptian authorities took control of the project and removed Gantenbrink from it entirely. Access to the shaft was restricted. No further exploration was publicly announced for nearly a decade. When a follow-up investigation was finally conducted in 2002, the camera that passed through the door found another door directly behind it, and the investigation was again halted. That inner door has never been opened. Whatever lies beyond it remains unknown. Then, in 2017, an international team of physicists working under the Scan Pyramids project used muon tomography, a technique that uses naturally occurring cosmic ray particles to image the interior of large stone structures, to produce the most detailed internal map of the Great Pyramid ever created. What they found was a void A large, previously unknown empty space positioned above the Grand Gallery, running for at least 100 feet in length. A space so large it has been compared in volume to the nave of a cathedral. Hidden inside the most famous building on Earth, completely unknown to modern science until 2017. The discovery made international headlines. Researchers called it the find of the century. And then, almost nothing happened. No cameras have been sent in. No excavation has begun. No follow-up investigation has been announced, completed, or publicly reported. As of today, that vast hidden space remains uninvestigated, sealed inside the pyramid, unexplained, and apparently of very limited interest to those who control access to the site. Hancock is measured but direct in his response to this pattern. He does not claim to know with certainty what is being withheld or why. What he does say is this: the systematic pattern of discovery followed by obstruction, of revelation followed by silence, is not consistent with the behavior of a scientific community that is simply indifferent to new findings. It is consistent with a community that has a significant institutional investment in the current story and a corresponding institutional reluctance to investigate evidence that might unsettle it. Academic careers are built on the foundations of accepted timelines. National cultural identities are tied to the antiquity and achievements of their civilizations. Entire departments, museums, and research programs are constructed on the assumption that the official history of Egypt is essentially correct. If it turns out to be wrong, if it turns out that the pyramids predate dynastic Egypt by thousands of years, the consequences for all of that are enormous. And so the door stays shut, the void stays dark, and the questions stay unanswered. Graham Hancock does not claim to have solved the mystery of the Great Pyramid. He does not claim to know with certainty the name or the nature of the civilization that built it. What he claims, and what he has spent 30 years building a case for, is that the official story is incomplete, that the evidence we have, examined honestly and without institutional prejudice, points toward a human past that is older, more complex, and more extraordinary than the version we have been given. Consider what the evidence suggests, taken as a whole. A structure of unmatched engineering precision, aligned to true north within a 20th of a degree, leveled to within 1 inch across 13 acres, fitted to tolerances a razor blade cannot penetrate, built, we are told, with copper tools and wooden sledges in 20 years. An interior architecture that encodes advanced mathematical constants, astronomical relationships, and geographic data that should not have been available to its supposed builders. A neighboring monument, the Great Sphinx, whose body shows the distinctive erosion patterns of prolonged rainfall that has not fallen on Giza for 10,000 years. A layout that mirrors the stars of Orion's belt as they appeared in the sky 10,500 years ago, the same date indicated by the Sphinx's water erosion, as identified by 2 independent researchers working in 2 entirely unrelated fields. Similar alignments, similar mathematical constants, and eerily similar architectural philosophies appearing at ancient sites on every inhabited continent, built by cultures that mainstream history insists had no contact with one another. A sealed door inside the pyramid, found in 1993, never opened. A vast hidden void discovered in 2017, never investigated. Taken individually, each of these anomalies can be explained away, minimized, or simply ignored. Taken together, they form a picture. An incomplete picture, but one whose outline, once seen, is very difficult to unsee. The Great Pyramid is not just a building. It is not just a tomb. It is the most durable object ever created by human hands, a structure specifically designed at every level of its engineering to survive whatever the Earth could throw at it for as long as the Earth endures. If it was built as a message, then the message was meant to last. And we are still, after all this time, in the very early stages of learning to read it. The people who built this structure, whoever they were, understood the stars, measured the planet, encoded their knowledge in stone, and disappeared. They left behind the greatest monument in human history as a testament to what they knew and a record that they had existed. Perhaps they also left behind a warning. If a civilization as capable as theirs could be wiped from the face of the earth in a single catastrophic event, what does that tell us about the permanence of our own? The sand keeps its secrets, but the stone remembers everything. What do you think? Has the official story earned your confidence, or does the evidence point somewhere older and far more extraordinary? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this raised more questions than it answered, that is exactly the point.